Every Nigerian election begins long before the election day. It begins inside the political parties. It begins with delegates who are accredited or even excluded. It also begins with aspirants who are allowed to compete and those who are quietly pushed out or given with some flimsy reasons are disqualified and not clear to contest. It begins with the figures that are counted or inflated or not even counted. It begins with violence that is ignored because it happens before the general elections. And this is why the latest allegations surrounding the primaries of the various political parties, especially the ruling party, are not just about party members or politicians or those contesting the elections. They are about Nigeria, the security of Nigeria, and the well-being of the people. Because when a party primary is manipulated, the voter is robbed before the ballot even reaches the polling unit. Recent reports on the various primaries that are taking place in the country allege irregularities such as intimidation, disruption of voting, exclusion of delegates, and attempts by power blocks to impose preferred candidates. In Lagos mainland, for instance, reports by the News Agency of Nigeria and other outlets said that the APC House of Representatives primary was marred by allegations of voter intimidation, disruption across various voting centers, including Apapa Road, Makoko, Iwaya, Adekunle, and Old Yaba Road. Security personnel were also alleged to have been involved in some of the activities that have made the elections to be regarded as flawed. But this is not just about one party. It is about Nigeria and its election. It is about a Nigerian pattern and a system where internal democracy fails and national democracy begins to fail. And when democracy begins to fail, insecurity and all manners of problems begin to expand in the country. This is the other side.
Mun Allah wadare da wannan layi saboda wannan ba hidima bane bayan da zaka tare mutane tun safi ana nana tunana a ce yanzu ko gari baka da su ba wani malamin zabe ba wani kayan zabe da zo inda ka ce kato bayan kato mai girma shugaban kasa da kai mai girma shugaban jami'ar BC na kasa mun Allah wadare da wannan tsari kuma ba mun tarci ba ba mu yadda da wannan layin da kawo ba wannan layin da ma mun ce za mu gani a wannan matakin ba mun ga irin abun ba abun da kai ba wani wuri da kai zabe ko ba mu sai zabe ba tun safi muke nan kuma har yanzu muna wurin ba za mu bar nan ba har karfe 9 da dare in har za zuwa zaben daga nan zuwa gobe wallahi muna jira za mu jira amma tun da ba za a yi ba mun ga salon kato bayan katon kuto ai gyara ma salon katon bayan katon na baya gyara ma na bayan da irin wannan in da irin wannan ne wallahi mun Allah wadare da wannan layi wannan mun yi Allah wadare a matsayin mu na al'umman jihar Bauchi ba mu aminta da wannan layi ba an cutar da mu an cutar da iyayen mu mata an tara su tun safe su wuri har yanzu wasu kare guda ba mun yi Allah wadare da shugabanci irin na jami'ar APC shugabanci jami'ar APC daga sama har kasa mun yi Allah wadare ne Allah wadare ne.
Under Nigeria's Electoral Act 2022, before the new one that was enacted this year, political parties are required to nominate candidates through direct primaries, indirect primaries, or consensus arrangement. And these processes are to be monitored by the Independent National Electoral Commission. Section 84 of the Act states that parties seeking to nominate candidates must hold primaries for aspirants to elective positions, and that process may be by direct, indirect, or consensus. On paper, this should protect democracy. In practice, however, party primaries in Nigeria often become battlefields of electoral manipulation. The allegations are many and they are familiar. Delegate lists are disputed, accreditation is unclear, aspirants complain of exclusion, vote counts become controversial, even laughable. Consensus becomes imposition. Security agencies arrive after tension has already escalated and are also alleged to be part of the manipulation and the crisis at the polling units. Party leaders promise investigation, but the results that are complained against are often upheld.
First of all, before the elections happened, there was a meeting where they had gathered all APC members. I was told that I wasn't invited for that meeting. I had to force myself. Mr. Peter Panke, who is currently on seat, was there, and they said that all the executives had directed the people in the hall that they were to follow the governor's directives and vote for Peter Apanke, regardless of the fact that I was present and there was another lady too who had not stepped down to join the race. So that was on the day of the primaries. So after that, we were meant to go to our various wards and begin voting. So we had started, I had gone to my ward, which is Utugwan North, where I'm very familiar with my people. And my people had told me that they were directed to vote for Peter Apanke, but because of the relationship I have with them, they assured me that they were going to at least give some votes to me, but they were told that they were giving no materials. So they began by recording. Apparently, they said something about verbal affirmation, which we have done our research, myself and my lawyer, and there's no such thing as that supported by APC or INEC or the Constitution or anything like that. But even at that, with the so-called verbal affirmation, you can see online that people were counting from 45 to 100 and all sorts of things. So they weren't even able to take that seriously. So I can conclude, that there was actually no primary elections done in Obudu, Bekwara, or Banliku area. Some of the ward chairmen who said that and some other witnesses said to me that the materials were given directly to the person who's on seat, who is Peter Apanke, Cross River and Akwa Ibom indigents. So even at the town hall meeting, when the governor had said that is his choice, because I was present at the town hall meeting where he had Obudu stakeholders, and he was instructing us that these are his choices. By then, I'd already picked my form. I wasn't made aware in the public that the governor had made his choice. In fact, we were encouraged by the presidency and also Senator Remi Tinubu, who is my mentor. More women and young people were encouraged to pick the form.
To understand why Nigerians react strongly to allegations of manipulations, we must return to the history of Nigeria's election. Nigeria's electoral crisis did not begin in 2023. They did not begin with the Vivas. They did not begin with IRF. They did not begin with social media videos of angry delegates. They go back to the First Republic. The 1964 federal election and the 1965 Western Region election were surrounded by allegations of intimidation, rigging, boycott, and violence. The crisis deepened political instability in the country and contributed to the collapse of the First Republic. By 1983, Nigeria was again facing a major political crisis. The general election of that year was widely accused of massive rigging, violence, abuse of incumbency, and the result was not just mere political bitterness, even though at that time we had a political party which slogan was "Politics without bitterness." The crisis helped to create the atmosphere that led to the military coup of 1983. Then came July 1993. For many Nigerians, the annulment of the presidential election, widely believed to have been won by Chief MKO Abiola, became a very deep wound that only took the intervention 1998 of bringing President Olusegun Obasanjo, a fellow Yoruba man, a preferred presidential candidate, that led to the downplay of the crisis that was generated from the annulment of that election. When democracy returned in 1999, hopes were again raised, but the pattern did not disappear. Human Rights Watch noted that observers from the Carter Foundation concluded that the 1999 presidential election was so flawed that they could not make an accurate judgment about the outcome. The 2003 elections were also marred by fraud, violence, with at least 100 people reportedly killed. Then came 2007, one of the most controversial elections in Nigeria's Fourth Republic. International and domestic observers condemned the process. Human Rights Watch again reported that the European Union observers described the 2007 elections as among the worst they had witnessed anywhere in the world, and estimated that at least 300 people were killed in violence linked to the elections. Even President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, the man who emerged from that election as president, acknowledged that the process was flawed and set up an electoral reform committee. This is important because when a country repeats the same electoral failures for decades, season out of season, in every election cycle, citizens stop seeing each controversy as an a selected event. They begin to see a system and a pattern. Electoral manipulation do not only damage democracy. In Nigeria, it can damage national security. When people believe that elections are stolen, they may lose faith in lawful politics. When aspirants believe party primaries are manipulated, they may mobilize talks. When communities believe that their votes do not count, grievances harden. When politicians believe that violence works, they invest in violence. This is where election rigging is not just a governance issue, it is a security issue. Even when an election is technically better than the previous one, mistrust can still turn into violence if citizens believe that the system is unfair to them. Electoral manipulation also creates what can be called militarized politics. Politicians recruit thugs. Thugs become armed groups. Armed groups become community enforcers. Community enforcers become criminal networks. Criminal networks later become a threat to the same politicians who created them. Human Rights Watch documented how politicians in the Niger Delta mobilized and funded armed groups to help them rig elections, and this contributed to sustained violence and criminality in the region. The same pattern is not just in the Niger Delta, it is in different parts of Nigeria. In some areas, political thugs later become cult groups. In others, they become enforcers for local strongmen. In conflict-prone states, election violence merges with ethnic, religious, land, and communal tensions. So when we talk about manipulated primaries, inflated votes, forged delegate lists, and intimidations, we're not just discussing party gossip, we're discussing the early warning signs of instability.
What are you doing here? What rubbish is this one? Eh? What are you don't have respect for yourself? You want to, this is it, what are you doing? Bring those before you are killing. Eh? I'm asking you that knows. You are behaving like them. You too, you are behaving like them. Look at this one. You this witch. God will punish you. God will punish you, this idiot. God will, your generation forever will never see good. God will punish you, punish your great generation. Ungrateful idiot. What is your feeling? Bring it, I want to see it now. Bring down the results. Otherwise, we all remain here. Everything you come, you always do it negatively. Instead of you to sit down, let's do election. You hide, carry materials and come and sit there. And look at their faces and you say they are feeling. What are you feeling? A team that has been disqualified by APC, what are you doing here? A man that has been disqualified, you are going to see there to feel results for them. What are you doing here? You intend, you better bring those documents.
By 2023, Nigerians had been promised a new era. Beavers will improve voter and accreditation. IREF will improve public access to polling unit results. Technology, we thought, will reduce manipulation at the collation. But the 2023 presidential election became another controversy. The European Union observer team said Nigeria's 2023 elections exposed endemic systemic weaknesses and called for further legal and operational reforms to improve transparency, inclusiveness, and accountability. This is the central crisis of Nigeria's elections today. The country is no longer debating ballot snatching only. It is debating trust. Trust in INEC, trust in collation, trust in party primaries, trust in the courts, trust in technology, and trust in the political class. And once trust collapses, every election becomes a battlefield before it begins. But the truth is that even though Nigerians have placed a lot of hope on technology, technologies alone cannot save democracy. A beaver's machine cannot stop a governor from imposing a candidate. An RF portal cannot stop a party from manipulating delegates' lists. RF cannot stop polling agents and presiding officers from tampering with results before uploading them. Electronic transmission cannot solve problems of intimidation at world congresses. No device can replace integrity. Nigeria needs electoral technology, but Nigeria also needs, and much more, democratic culture where people's rights will be respected, while people will decide that if they are not popular, they will not have to force themselves on the people of the country. Many Nigerians may ignore party primaries because they seem to look like internal party affairs, but that is a very big mistake. A manipulated primary can produce a candidate who has no organic support. A manipulated primary can silence young aspirants. A manipulated primaries can exclude women. Manipulated primaries will exclude the people who really want to work for their communities and impose people whose allegiance is not to the people whom they seek to represent. Manipulated primary can punish reform-minded politicians. A manipulated primary can reward loyalty to godfathers rather than the populace and the people who want to be represented. Once such a candidate enters office, they govern with a debt to those who installed them. Their loyalty is not to the people. Their loyalty is not to the communities. Their loyalties may be to the godfathers. The godfathers' interest might not be to develop those communities. That is where bad primaries lead to bad governance. Bad governance leads to public anger. Public anger leads to protests. Protests can become repression, and repression can become radicalization or give birth to radicalization. And radicalization can become the source of immense security that could upturn the apple cart. This chain is not theoretical. This chain is a reality that Nigerians and the people in authority must take note. Nigeria's electoral history teaches one painful lesson. When elections are manipulated, the damage does not end with the loser. It spreads to the courts. It spreads to the streets. It spreads into ethnic suspicion. It spreads into religious tension. It spreads into insecurity. It spreads into the belief that democracy is only a performance stage by the powerful. A nation cannot build its general elections on fraudulent party primaries. A country already battling insurgency, banditry, separatist agitation, communal violence, kidnapping, and public distrust cannot afford another electoral cycle defined by manipulation. The question is no longer whether Nigeria can conduct elections. Nigeria has conducted many elections. The real question is whether Nigeria can conduct elections that citizens believe in. Without belief, democracy becomes richer. And when democracy becomes richer, instability becomes inevitable. My name is Rimamnde Shawulu. This is The Other Side. If you believe Nigeria's democracy must be defended before election day, share this video, subscribe, and join the conversation.